For years, the truth stayed hidden, the victims forgotten, the cases left cold, until science revealed what time could not. This is decades in the dark, where cold cases are brought back to light. For decades, Nancy Daugherty was remembered as the woman who walked away, a wife who left her family, a mother who disappeared by choice. Her story was never treated like a crime, it was treated like a decision, and that assumption shaped everything that followed. Nancy vanished from Ohio years ago, leaving behind her husband and children. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no shattered scene that demanded immediate answers, and without a body, without witnesses, there was nothing investigators at the time could point to and say, this is a crime. So a simpler explanation took hold. Nancy had run away. In the 1970s and 1980s, that explanation carried enormous weight. Adults, especially women, were allowed to disappear. If there was no forced entry, no public violence, no immediate danger to others, cases like Nancy's often stalled quickly. She left was not just an assumption, it was an ending. And once that idea took root, it became harder to challenge with every passing year. The longer Nancy stayed gone, the more believable the story became. People reasoned that if she wanted to be found, she would have reached out. If she wanted contact, she would have called. Her silence was interpreted as intention, but silence isn't proof, and absence isn't truth. As years passed, Nancy's children grew up with a story that shaped their lives in ways no one talks about enough. They didn't just lose their mother, they lost her reputation. They grew up believing she had chosen to leave them behind. That belief settles quietly into a child's identity. It becomes something they carry into adulthood, long after the disappearance stops being discussed. Family members questioned the story privately. Some never believed she would leave without a word. But without evidence, without momentum, the case faded. Nancy wasn't searched for anymore. She was written off. She became a disappearance that no longer demanded answers. What no one realized was that the truth hadn't vanished. It was waiting, not in confessions or eyewitnesses, but in science that didn't yet exist. Decades later, forensic genealogy began rewriting what was possible in cold cases. Investigators started reopening disappearances long believed to be voluntary, cases where the explanation had always been convenient, but never proven. Nancy Daugherty's name resurfaced. At first, investigators approached the case with the same question that had lingered for years. What if she really did start over? If Nancy had built a new life somewhere, there should be traces. A name change, a record, a footprint of survival. The goal was not to accuse, it was to confirm. So they turned to DNA. Relatives submitted samples, unsure whether anything would come of it. This wasn't a database search for a known offender. It was a reconstruction, a slow process of building family trees, tracing distant genetic connections, and asking where Nancy should appear if she were still alive. For a brief moment, there was uncertainty. The possibility that Nancy might still be out there lingered. And if that were true, it would mean everything her family believed would have to change again. But the results didn't point to a living woman. They pointed to remains. Nancy had not started over. She had never left. Her remains were located in Ohio and identified through forensic genealogy. The woman long believed to have walked away had been dead since around the time she vanished. With that discovery, the entire narrative collapsed. The case was no longer a disappearance. It was a homicide. Investigators rebuilt the timeline from the beginning, this time without the runaway assumption guiding every decision. They looked closely at who had last seen Nancy alive, who had benefited from the idea that she left voluntarily, who had helped reinforce that story when questions arose. One person stood at the center of it all, her husband. For decades, he had been the consistent voice behind the explanation that Nancy ran away, that she didn't want to be found, that there was nothing to investigate. He didn't need to hide evidence forever. He only needed to repeat the same story long enough for it to become accepted truth. Time did the rest. With Nancy's death confirmed and her identity restored, investigators confronted the man who had lived freely for decades, while her children believed they had been abandoned. The evidence no longer allowed for ambiguity. Nancy Daugherty did not run away. She was killed. Her husband was arrested and charged, decades after he believed the truth had been buried permanently. Science had done what time could not. It found Nancy, and once she was found, the lie could no longer survive. For her children, the revelation was devastating, but also clarifying. Their mother had not chosen absence. She had been taken from them. Her silence was not a decision. It was enforced. Nancy's case is part of a growing reckoning, As forensic genealogy reopens disappearances once dismissed as voluntary, it exposes how often assumptions replaced investigation, how easily women who vanished were labeled runaways, and how dangerous it is to accept the most convenient explanation without proof. For decades, one man controlled the narrative. He believed time would protect him. But time doesn't erase truth. It waits. Nancy Daugherty didn't disappear. She was erased. Until science brought her back into the light. This is Decades in the Dark, where science brings the past to light. Subscribe for more stories where justice never expires.